On the way here, I noticed that there were a lot of police on the streets, a lot of traffic milling around, because they're here for us. It is the Super Bowl of the ocean tonight. Thank you for being here. We had escorts that got us here safely, and there's a couple other things going on as well. So you will notice the title is the ocean at a tipping point, because there is, in fact, one ocean. And this image that we'll transition to now, which we'll leave up and you can just sort of stare at it, something I only saw recently that gives you this realization. There's multiple continents, there's one ocean. The ocean covers 70% of the Earth's surface. The ocean absorbs at least a quarter of the carbon that is emitted into the atmosphere, including all the carbon we emit. It is a critical buffer for climate. We'll talk more about that. And despite all of the assaults on the environment, despite all the challenges to our fisheries, the ocean still provides a very substantial fraction of the protein for all the people on Earth, even more for people in the global south. And really, I think we don't always stop and realize that this is the wildlife, this is the only wild animals we really still eat, most people. Very few people are eating wild animals, but we are eating wild fish in many cases. About half of the world's ocean, half the world's population, lives within 100 kilometers of the ocean. And in the face of sea level rise, which despite Point Blue's warning apparently 30 years ago is going to happen, is happening, that poses an enormous threat to hundreds of millions of people around the world. Excuse me while I figure out the logistics of this. So the other part of the title is the ocean at a tipping point. The phrase tipping point actually fittingly comes from how we think about how a boat works. A boat is buoyant, it can tip, it's got a center of gravity. If it tips a little bit, it'll stabilize. If it tips too far, it capsizes. And that is, for all intents and purposes, irreversible. So that concept is being applied very widely to natural, social, and physical systems. Are there small nudges, small pushes that can tilt a system past a tipping point and into changes that could be at least irreversible on human or even any reasonable time scale that we care about. Let's just say that, even if on a geologic time scale, some of these things can reverse. Fitting to the open question, we may not answer the question, but we will pose it and explore it. So we are going to jump in. I'm going to start with Joellen. And Joellen, your lab apparently deploys drifting robots. I'd love to hear more about that, but maybe start a little bit at the beginning. What's the climate doing to the ocean? How's the ocean? What role is it playing in our life? Set the stage for the physical science of the ocean.
Well, one of the things that I'm from Arizona. I work in Tucson at the University of Arizona, and everybody's like, what is an oceanographer doing in the middle of the desert? And two parts. One is the ocean is taking up 93% of the energy imbalance of the entire planet. 93%. When we talk about global warming, it's not really atmospheric warming we're talking about. It's ocean warming. That's where it's going. It didn't escape. So ERBE, Earth's Radiation Budget Experiment, is this satellite that sits out of the edge of the atmosphere. It's a series of satellites that sit out of the edge of the atmosphere, and it looks out of the sun and in at the Earth, and it says every year, the same amount of sun comes in, roughly, and less gets out. And it's because we're stuffing the down sleeping bag of our atmosphere. And we might have started back in pre-industrial times with like the Walmart sleeping bag, the really thin one that your butt got really cold up at the Grand Canyon sometime. Yeah, that one. That's what we started with. And we're now in a sleeping bag full of carbon dioxide that's like the REI Everest bag. And that heat is that I experience with longer, hotter summers where I can't put my kids out to play. It's cabin fever season in Arizona all summer long, and mama needs a drink if you're not going to be able to put those kids outside. I'm telling you, it's hard. And my air conditioning bill, maybe your air conditioning bill, it's getting longer, it's getting hotter, and it seems endless. Those summers, those wildfire summers with the smoke and all the rest of it, those summers are determined by how much heat the ocean takes up. How much doesn't it take up? How much stirring is actually happening? Yeah, we get 2 measurements a day of the winds over the ocean in every rough spot. It's not enough. It's not even close to enough. 72, okay, and here's one last little thing, especially I see some young people over in the audience, et cetera, and I'm like, look, we have about 6,000 PhD level oceanographers in the entire world out of 8 billion people. They are responsible for 72% of the Earth's surface, as you can see here, 72% of the Earth's surface, 93% of the energy imbalance, 1 out of 4 carbon molecules that comes out of anybody's tailpipe anywhere in the world, 30% of the protein that we consume as human beings, and there are 6,000 of them in the entire world. We are so unprepared. We are so unprepared. Anybody who stopped going to school before 1980 never had any climate, probably had 0 oceans, and probably has not learned more than whatever was in the latest nature documentary. And this is your world. This is your planet. This is what's happening tomorrow. And I'm kind of looking at California going, so you're all about your oceans, you're all about your beaches, you're completely awesome, and we love you, and we love to visit you, and you're the 5th largest economy on the planet. Pretty please. We are heading, all right, so as we warm, that warm water layer gets thicker and thicker. It gets thicker and thicker, and it's fighting with winds that are increasing and increasing because our stratosphere cools the same time our troposphere warms. The lower atmosphere is warming. That means the upper atmosphere is cooling. And it's cooling faster than the lower atmosphere is warming. And the bigger the temperature gradient, the bigger the difference between the upper atmosphere winds, the upper atmospheric temperature and the lower atmospheric temperature, the faster the winds will blow. So if everybody thought we were going to have a warmer, calmer, kind of more stagnant world, I'm very sorry. That is not at all what's going to happen. That's not what you're going to see. And if they ask you whether you should be burying your power lines, please, dear God, tell them yes. Because the thermal wind equation says, the bigger the temperature difference, the stronger the winds. Here we go, everybody. A warmer, wilder, windier world that is ocean-based, ocean-determined. And I teach a class, I have a class right now of intro oceanographers, and we have over 500. Here we go. So those tipping points and those young people are reinforcements, et cetera, and everybody who hasn't actually thought about an ocean in the actual physics, chemistry, and what it's doing, I encourage you, come on in. The water's fine, but it's absolutely critical. Did you know that NOAA didn't start using, the Weather Service didn't use a coupled ocean atmosphere model to forecast the weather until 2016? Did you know that the European Union started in 2003 and everybody kept saying in the news, well, I just don't understand why we can't keep up? Because they wouldn't put an ocean on it because they said it was too expensive. Even if the answer's wrong, even if the hurricane forecast isn't great. This is your world. This is where we're headed. Your ocean is absolutely front and center of everything that's going to happen to all of us, to our children, our national parks. You know, my favorite park was Glacier National Park, but it's going to be National Park any minute now.
So Joellen, if we come, so just come to California, the thicker warm layer on the surface of the ocean, the winds are maybe blowing more, and there's a critical interaction there. What does this mean for the coast of California? Are we going to be able to go swimming in the future? It gets really cold here in the wind. You know that.
I
cold
do.
The water is in summer.
So you get that lovely, so San Diego Pier, at Scripps has the record hottest temperatures, and everybody's like, woohoo! And I'm like, that's a marine heat wave. It's probably starving a lot of our fish and other organisms. However, at the same time, up here in the north, we might be having a massive upwelling event, which is potentially inhibiting recruitment of shellfish and other, because the pH is so low because you're upwelling water that's full of, basically old dead rotted things. It's amazing. These two impacts are fighting at the same time, neither of which is traditional. This is not the way it used to work when we were young.
Is there a simple answer of more upwelling or less upwelling?
Yes, and
now I'm going for an answer.
Yes, more upwelling.
More upwelling.
But you're also going to see catastrophic marine heat waves at the same time.
At the same time.
They're just seasonally different.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're going to get
I want to
both.
jump to Maria here, because Maria was, for 23 years, working for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration until quite recently, superintendent of some of the marine protected areas right off the bay. Over that time, yeah, you were yes, you were managing, protecting, stewarding these resources. And what changes did you see? How did that affect the ability to manage our protected areas?
And during my tenure, I've seen a lot of changes. And you're talking about the upwelling, and what's the water going to be like here offshore? Well, we're not going to get that warm water that they see in San Diego, because with this, what we found out during that warm water blob, our highly scientific term we used, to describe that warm water that was offshore, it was growing and growing. It was down in El Baja, Southern California water was extra warm. Here, because of the upwelling, that really cold, deep water that came up got smashed into this little lens along the coast. So our water here is still cold. It's going to stay cold as long as that upwelling happens. But what happens to the wildlife? Things are different. You know, where they used to live, their temperature has changed. Where their food is has changed. One thing we learned, do you guys like whales? Yeah, I like whales. Well, whales don't have food. That's the number one thing happening to our whale populations worldwide. There is a lack of prey. And what we have here, we are so lucky. Do you like the food here? You like food in the Bay Area? Yeah, so does the wildlife. We're the bread basket or the fish basket for marine wildlife. We are one of the most productive biological areas in the ocean in the entire world, is right here in our backyard. That's why we have 3 marine sanctuaries right here. Well, anyway, I'm getting distracted. That cold water lens, so it used to spread out across our continental shelf, but that warm water is pushing it closer and closer and closer to land, so giving us cold water at the beach. But in that cold water is where the food is. So that food that used to stretch out across our continental shelf here is getting pushed up against our shoreline. And when it gets pushed up, that water, that cold water, then kind of gets flipped. And so it goes deeper. So we see 2 things that are happening with our wildlife. So with our whales that we love, they're coming closer. Oh, yay, we get to see whales. I don't know if you were around when all the whales were in San Francisco Bay. We actually have a gray whale right now. But they're coming into the bay to feed because that food is getting pushed closer to shore. So, yay, we get to see them. But they're also what happens. They're next to ships. They're next to boats. So now, what is the second greatest harm to whales? So first, it's lack of food. The second thing is ship strikes worldwide. Whales are getting hit by ships. And then the third thing's entanglement. So we're seeing whales coming in closer. We also have, through studies, are predicting that our area right here is going to be one of the most important whale critical habitat remaining. Is going to be here because we have that cold water and that food. So they're going to be condensed, again, to a much smaller area. So we have Point Blue people in the audience. Yes, yay! How many of you like birds? I bet we have a lot of bird people. Okay, I'm going to be quick. I'm just going to give you another bird example. So that cold water that's brought in all that food in that narrow area, that wedge. So the birds, we're going to use the common murre, the ones that love the Farallon Islands. So they feed in that cold water. And during that warm water blow-up, we couldn't understand, why were we seeing thousands of common murres dead on our beaches? We're like, there's food out there. The adults are all fed. They look good, but all the juveniles are dead. It's not an toxic algae bloom. What's going on? They're starving. What we found out is that the juvenile birds, their wings hadn't developed enough for them to dive and get the food, because the water had done that flip where it's deeper and colder. The fish, the prey, was deeper. And so all the juvenile birds died. They couldn't eat. Just the adults could dive that far. So that's what's happening. So are we tipping? We're definitely swaying back and forth. And the wildlife's trying to keep up.
And we're going to come back to talk about policy, but this is really a segue to turn to Kirk, because the birds are out there eating the fish, and so are the people. So Kirk, you fish, you sell fish, you teach people about coastal foraging and fishing. I'd say you're on the ground on this problem, but maybe you're on the water on this problem. You just came from your
the intertidal zone.
you just came from your shack at Fisherman's Wharf today. But what are you seeing over your career? And especially, you really are. You have a lot of opportunities to talk to the commercial fishermen here in the Bay and how they're experiencing these changes. Don't forget your mic.
Yeah. Well, I have a loud voice, so. But okay, we'll do it. We'll go. Oh, right. Well, it's a big question, and I wish I had a couple of the guys I get my fish from here to answer. I think commercial fishermen right now feel like they're under the gun. You know, the crab season is all important. If you are a professional commercial fisherman in San Francisco Bay, it's kind of hard to make a living in the Bay Area if you're not doing crab. Crab is the king, and it's just I mean, these guys feel like it's just getting shut down everywhere they look, and it's yes because of whales or domoic acid in the water because the water's warmer and there's plankton blooms, and the crabs are feeding in that, and they get And if you eat a crab that's got domoic acid, I mean, some guys are really crazy. They suck the bellies so that their tongues turn numb. It's kind of dark, but anyway, so there are all these issues, and they keep pushing the opener of the crab season back. Tell me when was the last time anybody here had Thanksgiving crab? You can't even remember. And I think that I get a lot of the bitterness. That's what I hear because a couple of my buddies, they confide in me. And I think the thing that really pisses them off the most is why is it that the container ships get a pass? But, I mean, in California waters, I hope I'm not going to say something that bothers you.
No, please say it.
But in California waters, there are comparatively very few entanglements. And if you compare that to, I mean, how do they even monitor a ship that's cutting across the Pacific Ocean at 40 knots, or 30 knots? They hit a whale, you think they're reporting that? Yeah, maybe if there's other boats around, they'll do that, but. So why do those guys get a pass, but the ununited crabbers who can't really lawyer up the way the container ships can, they get shut down? And it feels, I think, to the guys, I'm not a crabber, but I can say that that seems like an unfair situation, to say the least. And it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, let's shut down the crabbers. It's low-hanging fruit. They're unorganized. They all hate each other. They're crabby. There was a poster on the wall of the San Francisco Fishermen's Co-op that talked about the similarities between crabs and crabbers. It's one of my favorite posters. But in any case, so that just, that's something that needs to be addressed. But as far as myself, I'm not much of a commercial fisherman. I will go out occasionally on a friend's boat, but I'm not a captain of a boat. I sold my boat 4 years ago. That was supposed to be something that would make me happy. They say the first day you own a boat and the day you sell it is, but that's not how it worked out. I regretted it every single day. Every single day since I regretted selling. I had that thing so cherry, it was beautiful, man. And I sold it. I don't know what got into me. Maybe the fact that it was just like shoveling money into a fucking hole. I'm sorry. Anyway, the things that I've noticed are I engage in a lot of fishing on shore, and I I like going out on the beach at night, and I target a thing called the night smelt. And the night smelt, people who live in San Francisco Bay think they know what a smelt is because that's the stinky thing that people catch on the piers. It's called a jack smelt. But these night smelt are true smelt. They're in the Osmeridae family. They smell like cucumbers. And they come in on certain moon phases, and they rush up onto the beach, and you scoop them with these gigantic, well, not gigantic, but these 6-foot nets that are shaped like an A. It's a Native American technology that was used for catching salmon in rivers and probably also smelt in the surf. It's a native fish. And, you know, my data on this is anecdotal. I'm obsessed with this species, and they're just gone. So it's like, you know, 10 years ago, all the old timers were like, "Oh my God, it's so bad. Like it isn't like it was in the old days." And this is like, just as a recreational fisherman, I mean, that's what everyone says. You reach my age, and everybody just a little bit older is like, "What the hell? They're just gone." And yeah, there are cycles. There are cycles. Everybody thought that sardines were extinct in the 1940s, and they came back. And the archaeological record showed us from core samples, sardine scales, yeah, they go in a vast abundance decline. But one of these days, I don't think it's going to go back up. Maybe I'm a voice of doom. I don't know.
Yeah. No. Well, it'll get more cheerful by the end. Don't worry. Kirk, first, I really want to name and the commercial fishermen that aren't heard from very often. They're not heard from in a setting like this to an audience like this.
They're fishing.
So for you to be able to bring that voice here is really important to this discussion. I want to really appreciate that. And I just, you know, the tipping point idea has been around for a long time. Sometimes it kind of feels scary. There's something. It's actually there's a little bit of the fear mongering in it, like, oh my gosh, we can never turn back from this. But it's also important to think about what it means practically. A species that goes extinct, extinction is a tipping point because it can't come back. So and it is not a tipping point. And we discussed this about this panel. Is the ocean at a tipping point? There's not a tipping point. But I want to come back to Joellen. Succinctly, what's an example from the physical sciences of the way that you can flip a system? I mean, are there examples in the ocean that you are watching in the data that would be a flip that you say that is a tipping point, or is it not that obvious from the data?
So that thicker warm water layer is happening worldwide because the ocean's absorbing all that extra heat. And it keeps going on because as we stuff more CO2 in the atmosphere, we get basically every molecule of CO2 that you burn for any reason. It could be plastics in an incinerator. It could be anything. Anything you burn, oil, gas, coal, you name it, those CO2 molecules are going to hang out for about 600 years. And it's extraordinarily expensive and difficult to retrieve them. The tipping point that I see is that if you warm the layer so thickly that you can no longer dig through with the wind, even with an extreme event, et cetera, then what you're doing is, could be like the Bering Sea crab fishery that crashed. And we thought maybe there was a disease, or maybe there was the Russians had come in and crabbed it all out. But instead, we found out that they starved because the water was so warm and it didn't mix, and there was no nutrients for the plant food, and no plants grew, and no krill, no crabs, nothing. So the tipping points are several. We're kind of sliding that direction. We're trying to figure out what I'm doing with robot floats, these profiling floats that have biogeochemical sensors. We have, optical sensors that do chlorophyll and poop. We have, nitrate sensors, which is plant food. We have oxygen, which is what are they producing, as a byproduct, and what are the fish breathing. It's basically an ocean health monitor, and we have hundreds of them now distributed worldwide. They're funded by the National Science Foundation with partnership with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and with NASA, who provided the optical sensors. And it took a village to grow this set of children, these floats. But they tell us what the ocean health looks like. And what we're worried about is that the carrying capacity of the planet is not just changing, but potentially decreasing. Now, are we getting greening in certain areas up close to the coast? Absolutely. Are we seeing flourishing of certain fisheries that we've been taking better care of and are managing well? Absolutely. Half of all U.S. fisheries are actually recovering and becoming more sustainable, not less. Half. That's pretty great. Well, okay, I'm a glass half full kind of girl, so there is still that other half a glass. So, yeah, we have specific problems. The acidification of the ocean is, when you dissolve CO2 in the ocean, it forms carbonic acid. It's a weak acid, it's true. But over time, we are lowering the pH of the ocean. You want to know how long it takes me with any one of my floats to tell that humans have changed the pH of the ocean with that one float? Guess how many years it takes? 13 months. 13 months. It goes like this every year, every float. I'm not joking. On, down, 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 as we absorb that CO2 by the ocean. So, yeah, we have some extreme challenges. Can I give them a tiny bit of good news really quickly? The tiny bit of good news, and I actually think it's kind of massive, is that since 2007, did you know that that the United States has cut 22% off their total carbon emissions? Okay, they cut my son, born in 2007, 18 years old today, or soon. That baby has never lived in an America that wasn't cutting its carbon emissions, growing its economy, and its population, ever. That kid, every year, he lived in a country where we were cutting emissions. Now, ask me if we have a regulation that makes people cut their carbon emissions. I could ask Maria, but she would tell me, no, we don't. That means, why did we do that? How did we do that? Did anybody get a fine or a ticket or an extra tax? No, that's us. We did this. We did this at kitchen tables. We did it at boardroom tables. We did it by the way we vote, the way we donate, the way we volunteer. We did this at our churches. We did it at our schools. And we've cut 22% with no regulation at all. So when everybody says, oh, next year it's going to be worse because blah, 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 political, whatever, I don't believe them, ever, because I think we're already making those choices. We've already decided that this is our choice, and we're moving as an entire people towards more efficient. We're going to save a buck and save the planet, and it's going to be amazing.
So that's a perfect yes. It's a perfect segue to policies do matter, just in addition to everything you said. There's lots of kinds of tipping points. Elections can be tipping points, at least in the short term, if not the longer term, and that is not a small matter. You have seen in just the short span of a year, the U.S. pull out of multiple international treaties that are the treaties either about the ocean or our climate treaties. So in addition to everything people are doing, what do you see as that impact of the U.S. decisions to pull out of this international dialogue?
Yeah, so individuals have a lot of power, which thank goodness. But international agreements also have a lot of power because it brings people together across the globe to a common goal. And they can be very effective. The one we were talking about earlier, the Montreal Protocol, CFCs. We had that huge hole in our ozone that was growing, and through a treaty, we all agreed we would stop producing CFCs, and it stopped that hole from growing. So treaties can work by coming together. We can solve problems. It's probably the most efficient, effective way to solve a global problem because we're all in it together. Right now, we're in a situation where we're pulling out of treaties, so we don't have that same global agreement going on. What can we do? Well, states can take action, and I have to say I'm so proud to live in California. The state of California is truly taking a leadership role on climate. The state of California is one of the, I think it's the only state that's part of the IUCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature, because of what we're doing here. The laws that have been put in place are executive orders for climate change, the Ocean Protection Council, and the bond fundings that you have voted for is all making a huge difference. California, I was just reviewing I live in Marin County. In Marin County, we have reached 80% of our transportation goal for climate change. That's pretty amazing. So those regulations help us, empower us to make changes by giving us tax cuts for solar, tax cuts for electric cars, giving incentives to put in charging stations. Those all help. And then by us voting for them, by us changing our actions, changing what we buy, as Joellen said, we can make a difference, 20%. And I was just reading today that we can make 20% more of a difference as individuals by the choices we make. So if our national governance isn't going to take the lead on this, we certainly can. So it's by sharing that news. It's by making choices of where you invest. If you have an investment account, you have a bank account. So where do you bank? And telling them why you're moving your money. And then by voting. So we all have power to make a difference.
I posed the policy question, and you took it back to the role of the individuals, and we need both. We know that they both play a role. But Kirk, your response on regulation was as a constraint. And I mean, you've shared once
Not really,
those
no.
issues, but
No.
And no, I want to ask. It's a two-part question.
Oh.
Anything more you want to say in response to all these wonderful conservation laws in California and the role they've played in the fish populations and
Right.
and making a living fishing, but also what you want people to know about local fish? That, going back to the individual action, do people have the information they need to make the decisions that you'd like to see people making?
Okay. Part of what I do is I take people out on these tours I mentioned, and we walk around and I point out different seaweeds. I show them how to catch eels with a stick. I teach everybody how to throw a Hawaiian casting net so they can get smaller fish like herring and anchovies. And the thing that always, I'm not casting aspersions against my incredible people who come out and do this with me, but it always shocks me how little the average person, even a person who's embracing foraging, actually knows about the local species. I mean, I've had tours where I couldn't get people to name 4 local fish species. So like
we won't ask you to do it. Don't worry.
Yeah. You're on a hook now. Okay, but
You thought
seriously.
those pencils were not for a quiz?
So So my suggestion would be, the regulations that I was complaining about because they shut down crab. At the same time, your California fish are so deeply regulated that if you're buying something that's local, I mean, even if it's something that's sort of borderline, whether you want to accept that that's sustainable or not, it's going to be better than anywhere else. Because California is just, it's, some fishermen would say, deeply overregulated. But what that means is that you don't have to do a lot of thinking. You go to the market, they have to tell you where it came from. Product of the USA is the first thing you want to look for. Not being jingoistic. I'm telling you this because we have strict regulations on our fisheries. So number one, was it caught in the USA? Okay, well, that's a start. Number two, was it caught on the west coast of North America? Because that's where we are. That's our ecosystem, the west coast, okay? And then if you can, focus it in, was it caught in California? Well, the only way you're going to know that is if you know a little bit. Like, how many of you like to look at birds? Okay, there's a lot of birders. So, if you're interested enough to know the difference between a great blue heron and an American egret, then you should know a black rockfish from a short-raker rockfish.
My binoculars just.
No,
I keep trying. I keep trying, Kirk, but
you need a scuba mask. No, but what you should get, hold on. What you should get, I hate should. I should not use that. Should is not where I want to go. But I would highly suggest a book. It's called, come on, I got it. It's called Certainly More Than You Want to Know About the Fishes of the Pacific Coast, A Postmodern Experience. Yeah, that's the name of the book. It's by Milton Love, who's the head of the marine biology department, I think, in UCSB. And he wrote this book, and the reason I'm mentioning it, beautiful big page color photographs of all the different fish, histories of all the fish, haikus, okay? Artwork, paintings in the corner, native, beautiful paintings. That's an incredible book, certainly more. Okay, and that's a good place to start because it's all the west coast of North America. And you'll open the book and be like, oh my God, what the hell is a hagfish? You're not going to want to eat that, I don't think. Although they do eat those in Korea, by the way, and they catch them in Humboldt. Hagfish. It's a blind lamprey-like creature that lives on the bottom of the ocean and tunnels its way into the carcasses of dead animals. That's what's for dinner.
I really do like birding.
Oh, check this out. If you're a hagfish fisherman, one hagfish, okay, you drop it into a 5-gallon bucket, and it will fill the 5-gallon bucket with slime.
Yes.
So there's a moment.
Wait a minute, I guess I get off task here.
Okay. I am going to stick with birding, by the way, but
if you guys want to talk hagfish, talk to me afterwards.
This is a
I'll hook you up.
moment. This is a moment when I'm not entirely sure what happens next, because I did want to offer, actually, as if I was sure of what would have happened so far. I did want to offer, actually, the panelists if they would like to pose questions to each other, and I don't know if they've been thinking about this. But what do you want to know from each other?
I got one for you.
Go for it.
Was it really necessary to close down all of the best fishing areas for people who fish from shore? Was it really necessary? Because you know what? I worked for the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, and I was the guy gathering all the data that was used to shut down the areas I used to fish in. And they're all gone. And it's like, I would go out on a busy weekend between Half Moon Bay and Santa Cruz, and I would encounter on the beaches and in the little rocky areas approximately 20 people. And of those 20 people, 3 of them would have a single fish.
All right, let's see what Maria has to say.
I'm sorry.
Let's see what Maria has to say in defense.
It seemed like overreach to me.
In defense of the marine protected areas.
And I also feel guilty because I gathered the data.
I think we hit a nerve. Well, first I have to say that wasn't NOAA.
Okay.
I think you're referring to
The MPAs.
the state marine protected areas.
Right.
And the state marine protected areas were designed to have reserves for a variety of different types of organisms along the coast, so that there would be these reserve populations that could then repopulate outside those areas. And what we've seen so far in Southern California, where they've monitored to see if this has been effective, it has. And that the spillover effect has worked like it was predicted, and there's more fish now available for people to catch, more lobster to take, right outside those reserves and in other areas. So you can, maybe an analog would be, they're the nursery areas to then feed the rest of the ocean. So that's the goal.
Joellen, a thought.
Leave the babies alone, Kirk.
Yeah, Joellen.
Tomorrow at dawn, 60 paces.
Joellen, you looked like you were about to add something. No. No,
That was
but
a
this
great
I was
message,
going to
though.
say something bad.
No, I get it.
This message about marine protected areas, I mean, this is at the core. I made this simple comment about extinction being a tipping point. It's actually biologically, it's much simpler than that. A population, when we do it in population biology, has a growth rate of 1.0, a flat population. 1.01 is growing, and 0.99 is declining. And that's the tipping point between whether you have a sustainable or growing population, and you cannot go down forever. And it is simple measures like providing the nurseries, ensuring that there is population growth that just can make the difference with unanticipated or anticipated consequences at times. We're not done by any means, but we knew this time would fly by. This is a reminder, if you have cards and you have questions, to jot them down now. In a couple moments, folks will come and collect them from you. We had intended to ask each of you to give a nugget of what you think, what you'd like to leave people with. I feel like they all came out already from what we talked about before, but okay, not necessarily. But Joellen, but to the. Yeah, no. What do you want to? What
Swap, share,
thought.
speak up. This is my side hustle, Science Moms, where I work with Catherine Hayhoe to do some outreach to regular folks who don't know a whole lot about climate change, don't have a lot of access to, a continuing education while raising kids and slogging to work and all those great things. So the things we push are little tiny snips of video that you can watch while you're sitting in line to pick your kid up. It should be that short, 90 seconds, maybe 3 minutes if the line is long and the bus is stinky. But we say swap, share, speak up. Swap whenever you can, wherever you can, whether it's at your town council or at your kitchen table or your boardroom table. Swap away from fossil fuel burning or any kind of burning. Swap away from burning. We need to go towards non-carbon power. There's lots of sources. In Arizona, we get 42% of our electricity from a nuclear power plant, Palo Verde. We get a lot from hydro. We get it from solar. We get it from wind. We have a real mix, but we haven't cut out the rest of the burning yet. So swap whenever you can. My kids yell at me whenever I have an Amazon box delivered to the house because they said, "Mom, you could have done that thrifting. What's wrong with you? You could have kept something from going to the landfill." I'm like, "Oh, you're right." Or I could just push this button and they deliver it to me. But swap and then share. If you've got the best hack ever for your life and for carbon, for crying in the beer, get it on your Facebook page, on your group chat, on your Instagram page, whatever. Make sure you're talking about it, even if it's just over the backyard fence or to your friends. Make sure you're sharing your best hacks so that this is how we make a movement. You got to tell everybody. If you figured it out, don't keep it to yourself, share. And then there's speak up. I have a Saturday morning routine. My Saturday morning routine is to have a cup of coffee, walk my dogs, and call all my state and local representatives. I'm not joking either. Hi, it's Joellen again. What have you done this week to help stop big carbon polluters? You can reach me and they have to actually do this every week. They know me. Hi, it's me again.
Thank you. Maria, you spoke to voting, but I wonder, can you actually give people a sense here of who in state government or local government or city government is doing things that are taking care of the ocean? How do we, I know that we vote in climate, we're all engaged in thinking about climate, but how do we touch what's happening to the ocean in addition to the climate crisis?
Yeah, okay, I'm going to keep this really short because I know we're running out of time. But when I started working on climate change 20 years ago, I brought together a bunch of experts and said, okay, I want to do a climate summit, an ocean climate summit. And I was questioned, what the heck does the ocean have to do with climate?
What?
So,
Don't start, Joellen. Don't start.
so a lot of things have changed, thank goodness. But why have they changed? Is because people are talking. Like Joellen said, sharing information, talking with your friends, posting on social media, calling your elected officials. The ocean is so incredibly important. We cannot live on this planet without the ocean. That air you're breathing right now, at least 50% of it's coming from the ocean. So we need it. We need it for our survival. So yes, the ocean's really important. And you have the swap, share, speak up. And I have the vote with your ballot, vote with your actions, vote with your wallet.
Lots of ways to vote. Kirk, you made this very compelling argument. Eat local. Eat local. Eat local with fish. I mean, just think as local as you can, but anything else to add for the audience with your mic?
Yeah, I mean, my point is...
With your mic.
is just educate yourself. Shit. Well, that wasn't on the mic, so it didn't count. Damn. I did 2 of those. That's bad. Anyway, yeah. You're here, so I don't know if you are the problematic crowd. I mean, like, I'm going to tell you, educate yourself about your environment. You're all going out and hiking and enjoying the Bay Area and looking at birds. So, but I mean, if I was going to say to a larger audience of people that aren't doing those things, but that they enjoy eating seafood, it doesn't take that much to figure out where that seafood came from. Yeah. And, you know, I can get really nuanced with just looking at what's here in California, and there's stuff I won't buy here. But again, that's me. I'm crazy. You don't have to be crazy. You can just try to get something that's as local as you can and try to, you know, you're going to torture that poor kid that's working behind the counter at the fish market, right? Where's my fish from? But if you know the species, you can figure it out.
And, you know,
You can generally figure it out. And then you can dig down because you're going to have certainly more than you wanted to know about the fishes, the Pacific Coast of Postmodern Experience. And you can look that fish up and it'll tell you the whole history of the fishery and where it's caught, blah, blah, blah.
We had a call beforehand, and I actually asked,
I'm really plugging that book.
Do we want to share thoughts with the audience about the Monterey Seafood Watch? It turned out that would have been the entire hour. So they're not allowed to answer that question because Kirk has given you really a different answer. It's simpler. It is simpler, right? Just eating local. And that is not to say, of course, we respect all our colleagues. We're all looking for those sustainable foods, but that's some simple guidance. And we're not going to say anything more about any more details of the Seafood Watch.
However, No. Because
wait,
you can't always eat local.
Okay. No,
but
it's good.
eat
It's a
as
good start.
local as you can. If it's not
Yeah.
California, maybe it's Washington.
Yeah.
If it's not Washington, maybe it's the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, as long as it's USA, at least you know that those fish are reasonably regulated. That's
all
my
right.
point.
So folks are going to start walking around to collect cards. There's a couple people, and actually okay, that was kind of a wrap, kind of. Okay, that's good. We'll continue. Because actually now I actually have we have one question that did come in advance. So now we're actually going to go into quite a substantive question. Now this is part of Q&A now, it may feel out of sequence with the ideas that are flowing here. We had a question posed in advance about energy systems in the ocean, and let's just start with the agreement that renewable energy is good for the ocean. That we can accept that, and then the next step is, especially wind and nuclear, what are the other effects, beneficial or negative, that we need to be taking into account with wind and nuclear power and the health of the ocean? Maria, you want to start?
Yeah, with all of our energy choices or options, there are choices. There's going to be benefits and there's going to be impacts. And so we have to make decisions on what we can live with. So with nuclear energy, they like to put nuclear energy next to the ocean because there's salt water, and salt water is a really good buffer for radioactive material. The salt water is very dense. It helps contain radioactivity. One of the drawbacks from nuclear energy along the coast is the discharge of hot water. Usually it's fresh water. That's what's used for cooling. So you're going to really warm that coastal water. And as we've heard tonight, cold water is very productive. So you're warming that water. With nuclear energy, it's overall, it's a fairly clean energy. The drawbacks are you have to mine for it. And accidents are very rare, but when they happen, they could be catastrophic. So we have to balance.
And Joellen, you all actually studied fallout, so to speak, but from Fukushima.
We did. I actually have published papers on with a grad student on we went looking along the academic piers. We took water samples all along the coast of California and Washington and Oregon as well, looking for Fukushima. And we found it in parts per trillion, teeny weeny at the edge of what we could detect, the iodine-129. Want to know what we really found? Frickin' Hanford. Hanford is what the Manhattan Project dumped. They were hurrying. They did not keep good records of the crap they dumped into these tanks. The tanks are leaking.
And this is in Washington. And
This
it's
is leaking
flowing
into
down
the Columbia River. And so what we actually found was we found iodine-129 we could trace to Fukushima. It was at such low levels, the solution to pollution is dilution, and the Pacific is enormous. It is not a threat. They have done a great job in containment and then flushing out the waste that was a problem, and it's gone now, meaning it's been diluted so far that we can barely detect it, and I've published on this. However, we did find Hanford, which won us World War II, but is now a problem. It's a Superfund site.
Kirk, are the commercial fishermen, your community, have an opinion on the offshore wind power and how it will affect any of the activities off the coast?
I wouldn't want to answer that because I don't know what their opinion is on that. But yeah.
Can I jump to Maria for, if you were still in charge of our marine protected areas, what would your role be in deployment of wind power offshore?
Yeah, wind power has been proposed along our coast. And I think in reflection, there's two things that we really need to consider with energy development. One is having really good regulations. And that's, if we are going to go nuclear, you need really good regulations to make sure it's safe. With wind power, we need good regulations to make sure they're appropriately sited, that they're not sited in wildlife hotspots where the wildlife congregate. They're not disrupting migratory routes for birds or whales, and they're not sited in prime fishing areas. So it comes down to having really good regulations, making sure that we're siting these energy developments in the most appropriate locations, and that we just don't walk away from them. They get monitored to making sure that they are staying and well maintained.
I mean, I think in all of these installations, anyone in conservation biology, we spent a lifetime learning about local impacts of development of, building a wind tower or a nuclear plant, and focusing on negative impacts and how we can stop that, how we can stop and prevent impacts on wildlife. It's really hard to figure out how to balance that against the diffused benefit of clean energy. And this is a deep dilemma. I'm sure many of you have thought through this. When we saw solar power in the desert, wind power, we know we need it globally, but it's very painful to see some of the effects locally. And there's no right answer, but we do need the renewable energy.
I love.
Ask her a question. I want to
Okay.
ask you a question. Can you talk about the toilet water thing?
That's actually, I would like to see more of our non-carbon power being implemented in our fully managed human ecosystems. I don't really want to put it where we've got natural wildlife systems, ecosystems that are potentially vulnerable. Our nuclear power plant in Arizona drinks the toilet water out of Phoenix. That's it. There's no pumping it out of the ocean. There's no worry about where it's coming from. Somebody said, but what if you run out of water? And I'm like, then the zombie apocalypse has occurred because everybody in Phoenix is gone. I mean, it's really a fully managed system for humans that could and does provide us no carbon power that our great-grandparents invested in.
So we have a question from the audience, and it's going to continue right in this vein. What would be your worries, concerns, projections if we reopen offshore drilling off the California coast, the decisions currently being made by the Trump administration?
Yeah, I'll start with that one.
Yeah.
I have a huge concern. I've mentioned I've worked in this field for quite some time, and I have experienced oil spills along our coast right here. When I first started my job, we had the most oil on any beaches that were monitored. We're right here in California. We've managed to get that cleaned up. We have volunteers that monitor the beaches, make sure it's cleaned. And those volunteers actually have been the first people to notify the government that there is oil on our beaches, which has happened during my tenure 5 times. And when there's an oil spill, it's catastrophic. It's when people would ask me, what's the biggest impacts to our marine environment here? So I'd say the biggest immediate impact is oil spills. And then the second, the long term, is climate change. Those are the 2 biggest impacts. And yeah, oil spills are devastating to our economies, our fishing industry, our recreation, our wildlife. It's just.
And if it doesn't spill, it's spewing carbon in the air. We're pumping oil. I mean,
exactly.
There's not an upside here.
I'm hoping that, like in other places they've opened up, where I'm hoping our major oil companies just refuse to bid on the leases.
Yeah.
I think we should expect them to do that. I think we should tell them to do that.
I just saw a story about a coal plant in Colorado suing the Trump administration for forcing to keep them open. Things are a little backwards these days. Okay, there's an energy theme here, but you don't have to go with energy. I'm going to pass it first to you, Joellen. Are you seeing any use of AI that you believe will be beneficial to the health of the ocean in the long term? And if you want to balance that against your views on the energy uses of AI, your choice.
I'm enthusiastic about. So I have a problem with AI in the ocean, and the main reason is that AI is a really excellent gap filler, and it's really good with things that are very human-derived, large language models, et cetera. I have not enough data in the ocean so that the gaps they're filling need more than one puzzle piece to be filled in, and that AI does not do as well with. We need more data. I need more floats, we need more ships, we need more satellites, we need more in order to figure out what's going on and be able to predict it so that we can manage it. And I'm deeply worried that we're inventing things with AI that are not true, that are being sold to people because they're pretty and not because they're accurate. And I'm worried about whether an ocean forecasting that isn't better just looks nice. That's scary to me because there are people's lives, livelihoods, the planning of our coasts and our communities that depend on this. So we do a lot of algorithm development. We do a lot of data assimilation. We use AI, but we are extremely careful with it. And then, of course, there's the fact that I don't want my bill to go up because the local company sold all the cheap, steady power to the data centers and left me and all my friends and all the people on the spot market with potential brownouts and high spikes in prices that come from us having to scramble over what's left after the data centers ate it all.
You know, it's good those extra police are on the street, because if some people around here heard that answer, that might not be so popular in San Francisco. We're going to move on. It's a final question. Maybe Maria or Kirk. Actually, I do want to read it because it speaks as a teacher in the audience. My students are doing a project on microplastics. The oceans are plagued with them, and our plastic problem is not going away. How can we even begin to tackle the problem?
Well, I'll start.
Not my field of expertise.
That's where I started my career, actually, in plastics, and we're still here. Microplastics. Well, I guess, we could start with the source. Start by reducing the use of plastic. If all of us reduced the use of plastic and there wasn't a demand for plastic, we wouldn't be seeing it disposed of inappropriately.
And do you think you've seen these booms that are being sent out to try to clean up the Great Pacific, whatever that plastic trash? Are they going to work?
I
Is there
have a
evidence that it's gonna work?
controversial take on that, though, which is that half of 1% of the plastic in the ocean comes from the U.S. 80+% of it comes out of 6 river mouths in Asia. And it is local plastic, not our plastic. It's been counted, it's been surveyed. We understand where it's coming from. It's coming out of 6 river mouths in Asia, where we have municipal waste disposal. We are careful with our waste. We pay to get good waste disposal. We pay for landfills. We pay for monitoring. We pay for the garbage guys. We are careful with our trash. We don't let it pile up in the riverbeds. We don't let it flush out into our bay. We hate it. We have beach pickups. We have highway pickups. We are serious about our trash. That is not true. This is where an international treaty would be really useful.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I think we also should not underestimate what it means that we have clean, reliable tap water, because a lot of that plastic are plastic water bottles in communities that do not have access to clean water, and it just speaks to the importance of uplifting the standard of living, clean water, clean air around the world, which can reduce the trash as well.
Tell your students to go into like municipal water, municipal waste. These are incredible institutions that do an unbelievably important function, and everybody kind of thinks of them as like not that big a deal. But that's what keeps us from the mess. That's what keeps us clean, keeps the plastic out of the ocean, and helps everybody drink better, cleaner water and have better, cleaner ocean. I love them so much.
Can I just respond to...
Final comment.
Final comments. So globally, yes, it's coming out of those rivers, but we still do have plastic here, and we have plastic here in San Francisco. I work out on the bay, and I pick up plastic every single time I'm there. So it's there. So if that packaging was compostable, I was just thinking about this today. I was like, if that packaging was compostable, I wouldn't be picking it up. So if we did make these changes, we would see less. And can I do one more thing? I want to make a plug. No one asked me to do this. I want to make a plug for Point Blue.
Woo!
Because when I was talking about the oil spill and having volunteers that go out and they monitor our beaches, the sanctuary does this, that program was all started by Point Blue. They came up with the idea, the protocols, and the sanctuary adopted it and then brought that to, it goes from Mendocino down to Cambria. We have volunteers out there looking for oil, recording wildlife. And it's, especially right now, it's really important to have these nonprofit groups doing science where the government isn't able to do it right now, being able to engage volunteers to step in and
Citizen science.
Science, exactly.
Cool.
So I want to thank Point Blue for having us here tonight and for everything you do for our oceans.
Thank you, Maria. So that was both wide-ranging and fast-moving, and you'd be excused if you were asked to summarize everything you heard, if to try to distill it. And to help you, we actually did ask all the panelists to provide some additional resources. There's a QR code in your program where you can go and find some links, and you could ask ChatGPT, but I really want to reiterate what Bill said at the beginning. We're here, we're looking each other in the eye, and you're hearing from people who are authoritative and reliable, and it really matters where we get information. And I'm absolutely, personally very proud to be on Point Blue's board. Love the Exploratorium. I could have said more about Berkeley, but that's for another night, so we'll hold that. So can you all join me in thanking this extraordinary panel?